everybody. We have an awesome guest. This is episode 10.
All right.
Episode 10 here. We're cruising. Eric Wolverton with Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we were just diving right into talking about all the different things that you're doing and collaborations that you have. And so I'm just so excited because you guys are very busy in the community. And
yes.
You're doing a lot, but there's kind of a classic quandary with everything. And I feel this way too sometimes when we assist with nonprofits is there's so much good happening, but relative to the community size that we have, more people, I should say it positively, more people could be positively involved.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And so let's talk through maybe starting with, helping people understand what Habitat for Humanity in Flagstaff is, what are the projects that you're doing, and what are the gaps that Habitat is filling in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. So Habitat for Humanity here in Flagstaff was founded about 27 years ago. And in that time frame, we've built 22 homes for low to moderate income families. And our role is to get people into home ownership. It's kind of the end, if you will, of the housing continuum. If you look at homelessness to assisted rentals, and then you go to Habitat, and that's kind of where you're at the point where the family's able to save equity and therefore be financially self-sufficient.
I love it. I love it. And so with the 22 homes that you guys built, so those people bought those homes.
Correct.
Right? Yep. And now do they do, does Habitat do financing or mortgages? And so they specifically, help them carry financing or that or something of that nature? Yeah,
so that's what the major savings program with Habitat is, that our homeowners, all of them, are financed through Habitat, and we provide a 0% interest mortgage on their home. So that's where the savings comes in. We take away that interest that the bank would normally get, which is an astronomical amount of money, usually about 90% of the value of the original purchase price of the home. So if you bought a home for $200,000, I know that's not real here anymore, but if you bought a home for $200,000, if you paid an amortized mortgage to a bank, you're going to give that bank about $180,000 as well on top. So people don't think about that. Yeah, they think, $200,000, I'll pay off $200,000 in 30 years. No, you're going to pay off $380,000 in 30 years.
That's right. Yeah, paying off aggressively, getting into shorter term mortgages always help hedge against that number because it is big. But that now. Not that we're competing entities. Eric can't give 0% mortgages to everybody out there. I was like,
no, I can't.
You'd be the busiest man alive. But so specific people have to qualify though. And what are those? Yes. What are those qualifications? So those are probably, they're probably always shifting with area median income and that type of thing. But like currently, for people possibly listening or thinking of friends and family that could participate in the program, do you have? Rough idea on those?
Yeah, so we have two major criterias when we're selecting our homeowners. And so the first one is going to be income. Because again, we're providing a mortgage. We want to ensure that we don't overburden that buyer with the mortgage and the value of that. But also we want to ensure that we're supporting low-income families. And so our families need to be total household incomes below 80% AMI. To give you an idea of what that looks like, a family of three that would be making less than $68,000 for the entire family. Okay. Right. So we know we're hitting the mark when it comes to the families that are falling through the crack, the safety net. And so we want to make sure that we're mending the net, if you will, and helping those families so that way they can get into that home ownership model. Okay. The second thing is going to be housing need. And so once we do our selection process and we've kind of looked at our applicants, we know, hey, this pool is okay on the financial end of things. Then our family selection committee of volunteers actually go in pairs and do site visits at where the people are living currently. And we do this for two reasons, because one, we want to see if that applicant respects the home that they're living in right now, most likely a rental, right? But the other one, and this is what happens more often, is the house respecting the family. And so we see and we hear it from time to time, right? There's slumlords. There's landlords that don't care. There's landlords that just don't want to invest in their property. They just want to take the revenue that property generates, and that's it. And so we have a lot of dilapidated homes. We have a lot of homes that have mold issues that aren't being remedied because these rental properties, unfortunately, from time to time, again, aren't being seen as a long-term investment from the owner's standpoint.
Oh, okay.
Right? They're looking at it as, I want that instant gratification like all of us, young generations are talking, but even the landlords are like, no, I want that rent payment. I'm not worried about the mold in the bathroom. That's not my problem, even though holistically it is that person's problem.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. And so you, and that's part of the screening process, right? So you're checking with people and checking on the home. Now, so you built, so in the 27 years, Habitat has done 22 homes.
Correct.
And outside of that, are there other programs or ways that Habitat's helping, or is it just in the home building that you guys are really focused?
So we're really just focused on the home building, but we're actually pivoting in a major way this past year into a whole new model and a whole new brand of Habitat Homes, which we have actually created right here in Flagstaff. Okay. And we're calling them starter homes. So, being in the real estate world together, we know that for the last 30, 40 years, we stopped making smaller size homes. For some reason, in the 1990s, it became a norm to build 2,600 square foot homes, no matter what size your family is, right? And it was exacerbating the American dream. But our grandparents and our great-grandparents, they were living in modest 700 to 1,000 square foot homes. Their kids, maybe 3 or 4, were sharing a room. And that was normal, and it was comfortable, and it was all right. And a lot of times, Grandma and Grandpa lived in that small home too. So we just have to change the methodology about knowing, hey, we need to, first and foremost, create that inventory again of smaller scale homes so that way we can get younger adults into home ownership rapidly. Yeah. The big problem is as soon as we graduate high school, we're stuck with nothing but burdens. And by all means, when we're 18, 19 years old and leaving our parents' home, we're not adults. We're not financially responsible. No. And we don't have the knowledge as to making the right decisions on financial opportunities that are going to have major impacts down the road. So for instance, immediately we graduate high school and we go right into student loan debt. Then we go right into credit card debt. And then we're going and paying rent, which means we're not saving anything, right? We're just digging a gigantic pit that is debt. And so how can we change that? And if we have starter homes where even young adults can say, hey, for $1,000, I can own a home in Flagstaff and save equity, this changes my whole algorithm in life. I don't have to wait to save equity in my 30s or more likely in Flagstaff in my 40s and 50s, and hope that in just those 2 decades of owning my home that I can actually pay down the mortgage, that I'll have that as a retirement plan. So we're really trying to change it with starter homes, and the biggest part isn't the scope and size of the home. The scope and size is based on the ability for us to afford to build more homes, because one home for one family each year, not solving a problem. We have to build more, but more importantly, we have to build our inventory that's going to serve multiple families with just one home. So with starter homes, it's more of an investment program, and the way that we have it set up, and I love telling the numbers because this is a game changer. We have created the revolution in affordable workforce housing just right here in Flagstaff. So picture this. With a starter home, all you have to do is come up with a down payment of $1,000, and you own that home. No first, no last, no pet deposit, $1,000. After that, your mortgage payments are going to be at or below $1,000, with $833 of those dollars going to principal. That $833 times 12 months turns into a $10,000 equity savings every year starting year one. And so our homes are set up that you have to live in there a minimum of 3 years and a maximum 10. So instead of the forever home, bye-bye forever home.
Starter home.
It's about the starter home.
Yeah.
And so when that family wants to sell and then take that equity and cash it out, basically. They can only sell it back to Habitat. It's deed restricted, where I'll refurbish and resell and start a new savings program for another low-income family.
Okay.
But that original family, if it's 3 years, I'm going to write them a check for $30,000. 5 years, $50,000. 10 years, $100,000. And then I like to say a handshake, and you're out in the real world.
Yeah.
But we're giving them $100,000 of their own personal wealth to do that with no restrictions. They can spend it on anything they want. They want to get a conventional home loan and stay here in Flagstaff? Please do. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
We want to retain people here in Flag, and we want to give them that opportunity to do so. If they want to start a small business in Flagstaff, go for it. Help our economy and be a part of that commerce. Or if you want to buy a conversion van and just travel around America, do it. It's your wealth, and that's the key component here. And what I love about this whole program is these are non-taxable solutions, right? So when we hear about down payment assistance programs through our municipalities, those are being subsidized by our taxes.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't even see that money back. Yeah. So this is just simply using homeownership, equity building as a form of savings. Now, we've had to transition to this because, in our generation, Gen X, we were always told forever, don't rely on Social Security, you won't get it. So just a heads up, as you're a kid, just know this is not going to be a benefit for you. Yeah. 401ks seem to be disappearing. Yeah. Pension plans are being compromised because of the cost of the pensions, and especially now with our baby boomer population really into the retirement phase. And so what can we rely on, right? And so for us, it is building equity. That is always been the safest savings account in America, has been your mortgage. And so we want to just open that world to our low to moderate income families.
Yeah, and it's been increasingly difficult as markets has been shifting. Even if you look at just past the last decade, since the big housing bubble and everything, it has been quite a roller coaster as economies on this boom bust cycles of things, and home ownership is tricky. Yeah, right. It is super tricky. But as I hear you talking about that, I'm curious to get a feel more for it. So, is the same qualifications that exist for people to be buying homes that we talked about is then getting to be able to get into one of these homes? And is it like a lottery system? It must be super difficult because I can imagine a lot of people just wanting to sign up.
Yep.
Is it like, are your waiting lists just booming right now? And
yeah. So, first and foremost, when we're looking to select a family, that's a really difficult and also important process, and probably the most important process for Habitat. We want to make sure that we have an equitable process for people, and I don't mean the savings part, but a fair and balanced selection process. Sure. Us being the lender, we got to follow all of our equal opportunity laws. And so we want to ensure that those happen, and that's why no paid staff from Habitat ever provide any of that service for family selection. We just utilize our volunteer board of directors, and then we utilize volunteers in the community, usually in the banking and financing department, because that's what we're focused on when we're reviewing these applications. Talking about the need. So we built our first home. It's going to be completed before the end of the year this year. And it's on Butler and Leary, just in Southside, so a beautiful location. Yeah. And we had in just a 6-week period, we had over 650 families apply for this 500 square foot home.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's a tough job.
Yeah, so, like I've been telling everyone, here's the great news. We selected a family, but what do and then more importantly, how is the community of Flagstaff going to direct me to communicate to the 649 people that were not selected?
Yeah, and in the sense of that's where I think this whole new program is going is saying more. We need more opportunity, right?
We do, and vastly. And what's really great about the Starter Home program is that a lot of people are seeing the positives, again, in this self-wealth creation platform, that we're getting a lot of donated land now towards us. I'm actually closing on a great donation of 3 acres from Vintage Properties over at the Timber Sky neighborhood. Just those 3 acres, because again of our small scale standalone homes, we'll be able to put 48 homes on that property.
Wow.
And those 48 homes, because we think the average starter home homeowner will be there for about 4.5 years, that'll give them an opportunity to save $45,000 in their equity. If that's the correct math, then we're going to be serving 6 to 8 families over a 30-year time frame with one house.
Okay.
And those families will save a cumulative $300,000 for one house.
And so, but then an important piece on the back end of the math is, and we say these are, tax-free solutions, is because it's all charitable contribution, right?
Correct. Yeah. And with our land,
there's no bonds. There's no,
it's just philanthropy.
Okay.
It's people saying, this is where I want to direct my donation, which again is really great. A lot of people think that nonprofits are just going to inherently be very liberal standing, because we're here to serve the common good. But to be honest with you, Habitat is founded under Christian principles, and we have a lot of that conservative thought too, as well as our liberal thought. But it's more of, we want to empower the individual to donate and direct their monies, and we really think that we speak to those values.
Yeah.
And so for us, not only are we providing, and this is our model, we provide a hand up, not a handout.
I love that. I love that so much. And that's where I think, and it doesn't have to be as we get kind of into the philosophy of it, right? It doesn't have to be a political conversation at all, so much as I think that balance, right? And I feel that so much when I've been involved in housing here for almost 14 years. And anytime that, our housing issue comes up in Flagstaff, it's, unfortunately, I think there's too many people on opposite sides of things thinking like, oh, people just need to figure it out. I'm like, no, it's super difficult. We need to help people figure out, but we also don't just want to be doling it out, right? And so I love that mentality of saying, well, we're going to help, but you also need to meet us somewhere, right?
Yeah, and part of that participation that we ask our homeowners to play in the Habitat family, if you will, is that they have to do sweat equity on their home or other Habitat homes, right?
Oh,
so they actually have to work and build their homes. Why? Because we want them to be a holistic homeowner. We want them to create a value of that home within their mind and their heart. So if you look at a rental property, and if you look at families that unfortunately have lived in rentals for generations, they're used to someone taking care of them, right? Mm-hmm. So if the appliance goes out, who are they going to call? The landlord. But for a Habitat homeowner, if the appliance goes out, who are they going to call? They're not calling Habitat, right? They call the plumber. They call Home Depot. Yeah.
Or you get on YouTube.
That's right. That's where I get most of my training.
No, exactly. And even for small stuff, though. And I tell my kids, because we're very much into, renovating properties and getting our kids involved in that. And I just think, just basic skills. I think basic skills are so important. And I was telling them, like, hey, kids, if the garage door isn't closing, these are the sensors, right? And I believe it or not, and it's everyone just has their own experiences. But I've had tenants that are like, the garage door is not closing. I'm like, here's a YouTube video on how to adjust the sensor, and it works, And so it's the basic things, right? That you kind of take that ownership and accountability. I love it. So what's that sweat equity requirement look like? You have like a set hours or something, or in certain phases where you're like, hey, you're not gonna. The house is not going to fall down if you participate in this part of the cycle, or your plumbing's not going to go out?
Well, first and foremost, we try to make it so the sweat equity hours that are needed to be accomplished can accommodate the family schedule. We're talking low-income families. Many of them are working 2 jobs, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes 2 jobs minimum. We give a lot of leverage, but we do ask for them to provide 200 hours on homes. Now, here's the fun part is our starter homes, a small little segue, are now actually being built by Coconino Community College home construction management students. So,
no way.
Yeah, so
that's super cool.
Our community college is now building our homes here in Flagstaff, and they do it in a panelized system at their lab. And then we have the capability to just get a flatbed truck, put the panels on there, and then erect the home in 2 days.
Wow.
Yep. And then we're able to finish it out in just a matter of months thereafter. So now we can build faster too. Not only we got to build more, but we got to build faster and be, efficient in that. And so what we're looking at doing is providing our future selected homeowners with a free tuition, so a scholarship, to participate at the CCC home construction program.
Okay.
So that way the homeowners are getting their hours in, but they're getting professional training, and they're working right next to the students that are building their home or now their starter home.
Wow.
Right. And so when you go in, the CCC hosted this wonderful event because the faculty and staff at CCC heard about this and said, we want to be involved.
Yeah.
So a few weeks ago, they did a fun Saturday volunteer activity where the students were actually the teachers teaching the volunteers how to build these panels. And it was so amazing to be able to see these not only just young individuals, but of all ages going in there, and they learn the skills, but then they get to teach the skills.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, the best part about it is you see this framed panel of a wall, and everybody at that event has signed it with well wishes for the family.
I love it.
Right. So now they're touching the mission. And as I tell all of those students that are going to be entering into our construction workforce, which is vastly needed, that even if they just nailed one nail into that frame, when they drive by that home every day, they own a part of that home. Right? They're a piece of what made that happen in a reality. And so just that relationship alone, at CCC, their student population just for that program increased year over year by over 500%.
Wow.
And why? Because now when people contact Eric because they want to learn how to swing a hammer, instead of me, spending my valuable time trying to teach people to swing hammers, I can actually get the professional to do it.
Yeah.
And I can direct them now, hey, join CCC. For a few $100s, it's almost as valuable as that for a YouTube video, but more, right? Because you're not getting the 15-minute tutorial. You're getting the hands-on.
Sure.
This is how it works. Yeah. My favorite thing with that event, too, was I was watching one of the ladies at CCC, and she was pounding one of these long, nails into the frame. And no nail guns, hammer, old school. And sure enough, that nail's just bending like crazy.
Oh, no.
But she just stuck with it, kept bending it back, and kept hammering. And when she was done, it was like a standing ovation. And you could see her face went from total frustration over that nail to a huge, what I like to say, little league smile. She was just beaming because she accomplished that task and would not allow herself to fail, and that's the ownership. That's the value that Habitat Homes bring to a community.
I love it. And just, I think there's so many, and you and I haven't spoken a ton, full disclaimer to audience here. I'm aware of Habitat. We've donated and been part of, or just very aware of what's going on. But to hear, it's super exciting to me to just hear. That's what a nonprofit needs to do, is it's connecting community for a unified purpose. But with the community then knowing, as you described to me, it's super exciting to hear that then those members of the community participating it seems like they're all very well aware of the good that this is accomplishing. Of that end goal of someone actually owning a home. It just is so powerful, I think, for, especially when, we were talking about kids earlier, right? And kids sometimes, don't easily equate all the work they're going through to this end good that they're hopefully accomplishing of being a productive, member of society. And then for those people in those construction programs to know, like, hey, this is a skill set, this is a value, and this is going to give these folks that we're working with and teaching and training a place to live and have life. It's powerful.
Yeah, I think it's a holistic circle, if you will.
Yeah.
Right? Because we have a major workforce issue. So we're addressing the workforce issue, and we're graduating all of these now professionally trained construction workers. And I just, because I'm in the world of construction, these general contractors are desperate for people. It's not just restaurants that are struggling it's every part of the work industry.
And not just people, but good people.
Good people, yeah.
Good people.
I think many of us have said, I'll take a pulse at this point.
Yeah.
But the obvious point is what we want to do is we don't want the pulse. We want someone that's going to be contributing to whatever our job is and our mission is within that job, and to be a productive person. Yeah. The last thing we want to do is, hire somebody and then they silently quit or whatever that means. Like there's just so much change that's happening. And I think really it comes down to what we need is to encourage people to find what their passion is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then grow that passion, right? Because if we're not passionate about what we do day in and day out, we're not going to do a good job.
No.
So, and not everybody has that opportunity. And don't get me wrong, sometimes life, family, lots of things can make it so you got to have the passionate job and you got to have the part-time job on top of it too, because, well, this is Flagstaff and it's a hard town.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk some numbers here. So 27 years here in Flagstaff, 22 homes built. With this new model, I'm starting to get the feeling that this is going to allow you to scale much more quickly. I mean, you're closing on some new land. How many more homes do you think Habitat's going to be able to do next year?
Well, that's a tough question.
Okay.
Because it comes down to money.
Yeah.
Right. And so in order for the starter home program to work, we have to have upfront investment, and that's from philanthropy. So to be able to just engineer those 3 acres of land, just to get the land prepared for the houses.
Utilities and infrastructure, yeah.
We're talking $2.5 million. And probably, believe it or not, that 3 acres is going to take at least about 8 months to level out and get all situated and ready to put up the homes. So I don't see starter homes going on that particular property until 2024. But the good news is the starter home on O'Leary and Butler and Southside is actually going to have a second starter home in the spring next year next to it. And that's the other fun and great thing about starter homes. Because of the small size concept, we can fit more homes on smaller properties, but not squeeze them in and feel real dense.
Yeah.
Right? And so for this particular 2 homes, we're working with the City of Flagstaff Land Trust Program. And that particular property was just infill, meaning it didn't have any major value because it was only 5,000 square feet. You couldn't put a single family home on it.
Yeah.
Well, we just put 2 on it.
Nice.
Right. And so that's utilizing that land to its fullest potential. And we're really hoping, because Habitat is fully aware and focused on equity, inclusion, and diversity, that our starter home model is perfect for infill lots throughout our neighborhoods in Flagstaff, because the one thing that we need to do is get rid of the NIMBY attitude, not in my backyard, right? Yeah. A lot of people, unfortunately, have this thought process that we're trying to house zombies. We're not. I don't understand why people are so scared that we're going to hurt their home values. What we want to do is we want to show neighborhoods and those living in neighborhoods that may be a little bit more affluent than others, that we can put in a starter home and it's for workforce, right? Yeah. But our workforce, there's a lot of our workforce that make less than 80% average median income. And so if we can put a teacher in the middle of a neighborhood and a starter home, I feel that neighborhood is then going to be adopting that teacher holistically, right?
Yeah.
And so this is the kind of stuff that we need to do. We need to show that if you're in Ponderosa Trails, it's not just about $500,000 homes. It's also about opportunities to buy starter homes in that community for just $1,000 down payment.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And the hard part is I don't think Ponderosa Trails is even 500,000 anymore.
Right.
That's the tricky part. Well, but it's a different mindset too, where I think a lot of people don't like the high density.
Right.
Like when we're talking about a lot of the, more like a multi-level condo type density and traffic and all sorts of different things. So it's a little different take because doesn't sound like it's really that, right?
Right, and that you're absolutely right. That's what creates the NIMBY attitude because to be
part of it for sure, yeah.
Yeah, and the problem is whenever you put a high density of the same group of individuals, whether it's economic or what have you, you're going to cause problems. When you have shared walls, you're going to have shared issues.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And so we've seen a lot of habitat models that do very large scale multifamily homes, like renovating a hotel and turning it into livable suites. It exacerbates the problem. And so with starter homes, that's why when we designed this here in Flagstaff, our methodology was build them small so you naturally outgrow them and you want to sell.
Yeah.
Right? But
so the square footage, sorry, real quick.
500 square feet.
500 square feet.
Yep. But that's with a full bath, full kitchen, and then a loft-style bedroom, and then full living. Okay. But when you walk in the door, 27-foot ceilings immediately. So it feels huge.
Yeah.
But again, it's made to grow
27-foot ceiling?
Yeah. It's just really, really cool. And
I passed the one on at 66, and it's got 27-foot ceiling?
Yep.
I gotta pass it again because it looked more normal than 27. It sounds like you're next to the climbing gym right there. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's super cool. So there's been a lot of thoughtful design.
Yeah, well, and that's what's important. And as I was alluding to, 4 private walls. Okay, right? So your neighbor's not on top of you, And I know for myself, I'm privileged enough that I own a single family residential home. I can't afford Flagstaff, but Mountain Air is a pretty mountain town.
It's beautiful.
But I have great value in that.
Absolutely.
And even though my neighbors, don't get me wrong, they can certainly show and prove that they're very close to my house and only about 10 feet on either side. But nonetheless, I still have that space, right? Yeah. And they're not just right on top of me.
Yeah.
And so I just think that, again, we're able to utilize density, but not make people live on top of each other.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and it speaks to a level of like sustainability, right? With that
Well, you have to be careful because sustainability is another big function of starter homes. And so when we design this, again, since Habitat will holistically own these starter homes in one shape or form forever, we wanted to make sure that we're building them not to today's standards and certainly not yesterday's standards, but to tomorrow's standards.
Okay.
And so all of our starter homes, it is a model setup, but they are all engineered to be net zero homes.
Okay.
So no gas lines go to them. They're 100% electrified.
Okay.
And then they have huge, long, sweeping roof lines heading south that allows the solar, which we're going to put on every unit, to actually what's the word I'm looking
basically,
for?
they're putting back into the grid.
Exactly. So, but they're putting more into the grid than they take.
Yeah.
And so what's great about our starter home homeowners, when they're used to getting, especially in the wintertime, a $200 gas bill, a $100 electric bill, you're talking huge expenses, right? That's not even part of the mortgage payment. And so now with starter homes, you're going to get a check from APS.
Wow. And they do they do that? I know it's different by county, but APS does actually pay for what you put in? Wow.
Yeah. So because the house is such a small scale and our HVAC system are at the top of the line right now that you can get, and the insulation factor, everything is so intense that, yeah, you're literally not going to write checks to your utilities. You're going to receive one. And
I don't want to call them tenants because they're owners. The owners will get these checks.
Yep.
Even not Habitat.
Nope. And that's the beauty. And so, and then you got to ask yourself, well, how does this work if it's going to be not a forever home, A lot of people say, well, do you have HOAs? Do you have fees and things like that? Like, is it the onus of the homeowner to keep the house upgraded? Because the majority of the time of HOA fees are, replace my roof. I want you to paint my siding.
Exactly.
We don't always want to get in HOAs if we don't have to.
Okay.
But the good news is with our starter homes, Habitat is always going to be on the onus, meaning we'll always take care of the appliances. We'll always take care of the siding and the exterior paint and the roof and the solar, which is a huge part of the house, right?
Yeah.
And so we're going to make sure that those things are taken care of because, again, we don't want the second generation starter home homeowner to have to take on the older appliances.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That creates a tricky problem for you.
Yeah. But the good news is that most of those systems, are set up with warranties of 20 years plus.
Okay.
Right. So we're not feeling like this is going to be a huge crunch to us in the future.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, but at the same time,
when you check out at Home Depot, you're buying the warranty plan.
Of course. But
Gotcha.
Going back to keeping the onus on the homeowner, because again, this isn't a rental.
Yeah.
So when the homeowner wants to sell a starter home, then Habitat will go and do its own audit, if you will, of the house.
Okay.
And we'll create a punch list of things that the homeowner should be able to fix if there are any, right?
Yeah.
So if you got a hole in the drywall, YouTube it, right?
Yep.
But we'll tell them, either you have the opportunity to fix these problems on your own and save money, or I'm going to hire somebody and I'm going to make my life easy. So it might be expensive.
Yep.
And it's going to come out of your equity payout.
Fair enough. And so, so with all that together, there's one more going in then on 66.
Yep.
Or Butler, I mean.
Butler and O'Leary.
But no, O'Leary. And is that it for 2023? Is this other land is getting developed, or are there other projects going in? Okay.
That's it, and while we're developing that other large parcel. Now, we're also in conversations with some local school districts here in northern Arizona because they're having a major crunch with, one, recruiting and, more importantly, retaining their staff.
Absolutely.
We've got a minimum wage that's going to $16.80 in a couple weeks here in Flagstaff. That's going to end up making our teachers who are on a state pay range, starting teachers, I should say, making only about $3,000 more than the students they're teaching if those students were full-time. Right? So how is their value?
There's probably not enough time in the day for us to go into a deep dive on the economics of that situation. That is intense.
Right. Yeah, it's really hard. When we live in the great state of Arizona, that unfortunately is ranked 49th when it comes to the financial support that it provides our public schools.
Ouch.
We've got a problem.
Absolutely.
And the problem really comes down to communities, but more importantly, us parents, ensuring that our kids do have the greatest opportunities for their education.
Yeah.
And that goes all the way up into the superintendent's role, right? He wants the same thing for his students and providing that service for the parents of those students. And so they're looking outside the box. They can't just say, I'm going to give you a pay raise because you're the most amazing teacher. They don't have that leverage.
Yeah.
But they have the leverage of land. And so they're looking at using some of their unused properties to then be able to host starter homes, and then they'll be able to retain and also recruit teachers.
Yeah. So
right now, we're in talks. We're still working out the legal parameters of things, but we're trying to work with Flag Unified School District and Page Unified School District to, if we can massage that partnership out, we would be able to build about 60 homes for them.
Okay.
And that would just be for teachers and staff at the school.
Okay.
Right? So a huge need for us. And then we have those two areas. Their municipalities are begging for starter homes for their police, their fire department, and their essential workers. Because again, when they're recruiting someone from anywhere else in this country, they have to have, and I'm glad that they do, a very long dialogue of not does this job look good to you? But do you know how expensive it is in Flagstaff?
Well, it's across the board. And even that's the, there's a lot of beautiful, wonderful things happening in Flagstaff, and there's a lot of problems and I call it a lot of times growing pains, right? This town is extremely attractive to a lot of demographics, and that demand in this town is in large part what creates the costs and increase and the amount of people that want to get in here. And I dialogue back and forth with my wife, and it's funny because she went to school here, so she's been here close to like 18 years. It's crazy to say that. Sorry, honey, I'm not dating you here, but so she's been here a very, very long time. And then, we start to have certain sentiments of like, oh, we don't like how certain things are developing or doing. And then I'm like, but where do you, I always ask her, like, where do you close the door, honey? Yeah. And it's really hard then because we want to be an open and accepting community to a lot of different opportunities here. But it seems to me that where I was going with that too is that I know folks, whether they're in W.O. Gore, the hospital, or even positions that might pay even higher than an entry level teacher, that's even a struggle.
Yeah.
I have a good friend that's a surgeon that even said, I'm not getting what I pictured,
Mm-hmm.
with graduating med school here in Flagstaff versus what I get elsewhere. It's everyone's having to recalibrate a little bit, but it seems to me that. So is it a correct assumption that the program is only running as fast as it can get funding right now then, right?
Exactly. It really comes down to the money. My talking point right now is that we've secured enough land where we could build 100 homes tomorrow. $15 million will do it. $15 million for 100 homes when the average cost right now is around $650,000 per unit. Great return on investment.
Sure.
So now I get to do my really hard work. Land was definitely a difficult part.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big piece of the equation.
But now it's really going after individual donors that have the means and the ability to give, but also obviously large philanthropic foundations.
Yeah. Well, now, and so does Habitat? Do they specifically state? When you mentioned like housing for teachers and like even on those programs, they wouldn't. You guys specifically do not work with like state funded grants or any of that type of monies, or would those programs maybe include some of that? Because I'm wondering why wouldn't the state or other larger entities help with that problem?
So we certainly do reach out and apply for those types of funds, but when you're looking at governmental funds, they come with an incredible amount of red tape because for good reason. We as taxpayers want transparency. Right? Transparency costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about the reporting that goes into it, you almost have to hire a part-time staff just to do that.
Okay.
And so a lot of times we are mostly reliant on those individual contributors. And so, yes, there are opportunities for government funding to support us. But the other thing, too, that I look at is government isn't our solution for everything. As I mentioned, we shouldn't always be leaning on them to create our solutions. Again, as a community, I think, and I still feel that there's great value that we can holistically come together and say, hey, here's a solution. And if it's going to cost me, $30 a month to support that solution, that's less than a meal, going out to dinner right now.
Yeah.
That's about half of a dinner bill.
Yeah.
Right. And so if people can find the ability to be able to make those kind of sacrifices, then I do believe that, again, holistically, we can make this all happen.
Yeah. No, and I think that there is so much, or there's so much value to that where, we've always, from the business standpoint, skin in the game.
Yes.
Right? I've always believed in skin in the game. I think it's valuable as I look as a parent to try and teach my kids that skin in the game concept. And then you have, community colleges helping these homeowners. You have these homeowners working on their homes. There's all this skin in the game, right? And then from a standpoint of us as a community saying, hey, if we want these solutions, we also need to put some skin in the game.
Yes.
Right. And help towards that. Can't just expect other people, or on broader scales to be fixing these issues. So is it just a matter, Now, I know there's some cool things that we were talking about of ways that you know, as a nonprofit guy, get creative because we're, you know, everyone's busy. I think that's the biggest problem in life when we talk about, you know, so many fantastic things going on. I think, you know, and I'm guilty of it just hopefully as much as everyone else, that, you know, we just get so busy in our lives and different things going on and different priorities. But there are some cool ways that you've set up to give. I mean, one of you've told me about, or I'm very aware of your affiliation with Realty Executives, that those agents donate their automatic, right? It's an automatic deduction on their commissions that goes to Habitat for Humanity.
Yep.
So that's super, super cool. What are some of the other ways that you've created for people to give and to keep top of mind on that?
Yeah. So just real quick to expand on our partnership with Realty Executives, you know, what's really fascinating, we call it the Realtors Initiative. And we started this about 8 years ago. It's fantastic because it allows agents to be able to give to Habitat, but seamlessly. So a lot of us have heard of the United Way workforce, ways to contribute to United Way through your payroll deduction. Yeah. Well, realtors don't get payroll.
Nope.
Right?
Nope.
No, they get commission, but their brokerage, they basically just sign a form every year with instructions that say, hey, anytime that I'm closing on a property, please take this much from my commission and direct it towards Habitat. So it's a seamless transaction. They don't feel it. And then it's passive income for Habitat. So I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
And just those small contributions, usually around $50 to $100 per transaction is what they give, which is a very small percentage of the commission, sure, but a great percentage for us because, again, cumulative dollars. We this past year, 2022, Realty Executives, again, just through these small contributions throughout the year, have totaled over $17,000 in gifts.
Wow.
That's all it takes. That's why I'm saying, like, if everybody just was able to participate in one shape or form, whatever that value may be, then I really feel like we can take that $15 million and make it not feel so huge. And so, you know, other ways that people can give, obviously, they can just simply go to our website, habitatflagstaff.org, and make a contribution there. But we have a campaign that we run every year when we're building our home called Sponsor a Stud. So, and now I think we know what we're talking about, and it's not good looking guys.
No.
But it's when we have that opportunity where we can bring volunteers or just people that want to give and allow them to sign, you know, that framing wall for the future homeowner with well wishes. You know, that really brings in the ownership from the philanthropic side of things. Sure, from that donor standpoint, they can say, hey, I didn't just write a check because that's easy to do. We can all do that. But I got to touch it.
Yeah.
Right? And then therefore, every time they drive by that starter home, they own a part of that starter home. And they know they own part of that starter home.
Yeah.
So it's always creating that value.
Well, and it's awesome to hear about this as far as, you know, I've clicked on a few things and tried to read a few things of what you guys are doing on it, but just to hear all the different ways that you are tying that to community, you know, I think that's it means so much more than someone just giving the check to then be involved. And it's actually one of the things that early on in my career, and I found that we would get at certain times of seasons, especially too, there's just like a billion different directions coming at you for sponsorships and donations and different things. And so, I'd advise most people to do is much like you were starting to say at the very first, is do what you're passionate about, right? Yeah. Whether it's in work and life, but also get behind these organizations that you're donating to, and not just with the money,
right? Because
then what happens there is when you have that skin in the game, that sweat equity, and you are there in the trenches helping people out, putting the studs in the house, you're going to go get your friends.
Yes.
And they're going to get their friends. And that's what builds a movement, right? That's what builds change. Because one home a year, you know, in 22 homes over 27 years, I'm excited to see the direction that you're going to saying we have to accelerate this, right?
Yeah.
Because the home prices and the costs and this solution, you know, it needs to be here today.
Yeah, and we're looking at these 100 homes that we now have the ability to build in a 5-year approach. So like I said, we're going to have a year of developing lands and putting in that infrastructure. But then we have 4 years of major construction and growth.
And that will be how many units again on that?
On the 3 acres, it will be 48 units. FUSD right now, we're toying with the idea of about an acre of land for 12. And then up at Page, this one's really fun and unique. They want to utilize a old baseball field on their campus that is no longer being used. And so 2.5 acres to put in 40 homes there.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long would, right. I know there's lots of pieces to this puzzle, but I mean, ultimately, if you said over the next 5 to 10 years that you're doing like 100 units, where you did 22 in the last 27, we're talking about exponentially accelerating this.
Yes. And it has to happen, right?
Yeah.
We have to react to what's happening right now. And, we also know everybody in the housing sector that this is kind of our time, right?
Yeah.
So with the big problem of workforce housing, there's much more direction towards, hey, I'm going to contribute to affordable workforce housing because I need somebody to work for me.
Yeah, no, and it blows my mind too. And I am I got 4 kids under the age of 10 years old, so I cop out the card of just I'm a busy guy, but I think about these things sometimes so just me thinking about these things, like I should be much more involved, and all right, I'll guilt trip myself on that to some extent. But you start thinking about the secondary and tertiary impacts, and that's where I think we, as we can't solve the world's problems right now, but we as a Flagstaff community, and even just talking about housing, like we have to start thinking down those paths. Right, like you're saying, from that business owner, then to realize, like, all right, maybe I need to start donating a little bit to Habitat, or giving a little bit in little places, and it's going to make a difference somewhere. To just say we have to start solving some of these problems somewhere,
right?
However little amount or little, and this isn't a bit just a massive solicitation for Habitat for Humanity, but I'm super excited about it. Just talking with you about it today, that I think that. Yeah, all these things are connected. Not only and it was one moment, and I've said it here, I think once on the podcast here, is where, we were just with the busyness of kids and family, and then all of a sudden we hit these 2% interest rates the last 2 years. So it was just like the activity in the market was just enormous, and we were just trying to keep up. And then it hit me last fall, so about a year ago, and I thought, like I knew this town was expensive, but I was and I knew, like, raising kids here, that there's a smaller economy. Didn't know if they'd stay and things, but then it really hit me, like, who are my kids going to be able to go to high school with?
Right?
Are they going to be able to even touch this town? And so there's these are big questions that unfortunately myself or Habitat we can't entirely solve, but it's a matter, I think, of starting to figure out there somewhere that we have to figure out how to not just have this be a millionaire, billionaire town, right? That we need, we like that diversity of community, and we need to contribute to that diversity of community.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I've been living in Flagstaff now for 25 years, and so when we were creating the starter home methodology, a part of that was myself asking what you were just stating, and in those 25 years, I've had so many friends leave Flagstaff, and not on their own accord. It's because they're financially forced out. Yeah. And so when you mention about your kids, now my 12-year-old is telling me all the time, hey, I just made friends with so-and-so. A week later, hey, so-and-so is moving.
Yeah.
Right? And so even in our young generations, very young generations, they're not even able to have that community feel that we had the privilege of having.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I promise that wasn't a burp.
Yeah.
So, that's why we have to get back to old school, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing, too, that I love about starter homes is I'm hoping that it creates conversation for other housing authority organizations that are trying to support the continuum of care, for homeless all the way up to home ownership, to create a shared equity model.
Yeah.
Right. In order to move people out of these different segments, so homelessness, assistance and rentals, we have to create a forced savings platform. Habitat has figured that out through equity.
Yeah.
Now we're just hoping that these other folks will be able to do the same, because as we're seeing larger municipalities And it's starting to grow here in Flagstaff too in terms of our homeless population. And it's really funny to me that a lot of the media or even friends and individuals are just like, wow, where did all these homeless people come from? They just showed up, right? Well, no, that's not the point. That's not the case. They've actually been in a waiting line to get into the continuum of care, to get the support from their community, but it's backlogged. And it's been backlogged because there's no way to allow people to save money to graduate out of those systems.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you think about a rental property with just a normal person that owns the building, they want their perfect tenant is the one that doesn't call and the one that lives there for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Perfect tenant.
Yep.
Way to go. You paid 30% of my mortgage.
And pays on time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what you want.
Yeah.
Well, here's the problem. Unfortunately, our affordable housing programs want the same thing. Mm. And then that means that they're not focused enough, I believe, my personal opinion, on graduating people out of those systems.
Yeah.
And so if we want people to not live on the street, if we want to go down to Phoenix and not see on every single overpass a huge congregation of homeless folks, then we need to be able to allow people to filter into the programs that already exist. That means we need to graduate people out.
Yeah.
And that's why I really love that starter home methodology, because what the argument I make is, God forbid that one of us finds ourselves in a huge quandary, which can happen. 1 million Americans every year file for bankruptcy every year only because of medical debt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Isn't that disgusting?
Yeah.
And so let's say that we're one of those folks and things got even worse than bankruptcy and we find ourselves in a homeless shelter. So the good news is Shelter Services has a great program, a good transitional housing methodology for 2 years. But they need to have that savings program so that way that person or that family can save the very small $1,000 down payment for Habitat. And then they can get into a starter home. And so even though that individual may have fallen on really hard times in just 5 years, at least we'll get them to $30,000 in their account. Right? And so we're making the changes. And that's also what is creating more equitability, if you will, and not just in terms of savings, but allowing everybody to have a more equitable standing point, because with starter homes, you're creating wealth.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm really excited for with starter homes is we can't promote this per se because of our equal housing affiliation, but I really want to see a lot of first-generation homeowners applying for starter homes.
Sure.
Because like 30 years ago, when we put a lot of emphasis on first-generation college students, it's changed dramatically. And in the positive light that everybody said that it would. So now those first-generation college students have had their kids. They can look up to mom, dad, or both and say, that's my path. They've already created it for me. It looks normal. That's where I'm going to go. Yeah. Now we need first-generation homeowners. So that way those children see their parents and say, homeownership is the real thing. It's normal. It's what we do. Yep. Instead of right now, impoverished families and their children see it's a rental. It's run down. It is what it is.
Yeah. And, and I think overall it's maybe just a mentality of everyone, across the board, because I think it's empowering when, everyone has a level up, right? And that goes from like you said, from the homelessness all the way to leveling up into that homeownership, and then on to the next level of then actually taking that money, starting businesses, owning their next home, and so it's all that level up. And with then even that philanthropist right now, or that person that needs to consider being a little bit more involved in philanthropy, and knowing that that's a level up in that growth cycle, that I just think that that people need to understand that there's a better way,
Right.
Like you're saying for those folks, and it's equations in life. And if we just get stuck in thinking this is it, right? And even for that, and so I, going to speaking to those folks that just think, hey, I'm successful, right? I have my house, I have my business, my paycheck, whatever, life is good, to realize that there's actually, in this book I'm reading, I'll get through it at some point in time, I've referenced this before, but it calls it the second mountain, to realize that there's actually more meaning and purpose. And so even for those folks to realize, we can help other people on this path. Right. And that's even more fulfilling than you just sitting there being on it.
Exactly. It's really kind of funny on a personal level. I remember I've been with Habitat for the past 10 years, but I took a small little break so that way I could take advantage of an opportunity to fulfill one of my goals, and that was to work for public radio.
Okay.
And but what I found out was, one, that wonderful radio station really didn't need my help. Okay. They were already doing quite well on their own.
Yeah.
And I found myself to be incredibly bored.
Okay.
And really, really depressed.
Okay.
And just through boredom. And then thankfully, everything prevailed where I was able to come back to Habitat 3 years later. And, now I've been back for 4 years creating this crazy program that just has so much steam and potential behind it. And everybody asks, now you're going crazy. And I'm just like, this is called good stress.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stress that makes me want to get up every day and makes me want to do this kind of work. It's exhausting.
I can't imagine.
Writing letters, making phone calls to these families that don't get selected for a Habitat home.
Oh, yeah.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's emotionally draining.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, when I have the, unfortunately rare, but hopefully not rare into the future, opportunities of doing our publisher's clearinghouse video and announcing to a selected homeowner that they got picked, and seeing that reaction obviously makes it all worthwhile. So it's kind of like having a kid,
Best and worst thing you'll ever do to yourself.
Yeah, as long as they're cute and say, I love you, we're going to keep them forever.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, Eric. Well, we've spun out just over an hour here already, to where I think, it's super exciting. I think people just need to jump on. We'll post links to your site here below, or other places that they can find you, that you guys are really active on social or so.
Yeah, so we're very active on social media. We got the Habitat for Humanity of Northern Arizona page. We also have the Flagstaff Habitat Restore page. And so for those folks that are interested in donating in another way other than the check, if you've got lightly used furniture, appliances, what have you, and you're just upgrading, well, let's find a really, really good home for that stuff. And we do pickups for free. So you can just go to our website, habitatflagstaff.org, and you can even schedule your free donation pickup from Habitat. And those monies will go right into building our starter homes.
That's awesome. And then the free pickup stuff, we used that before. That's nice. Because some of that stuff's big. And then it's coming, I know you and I, well, you're not a CPA, right? So
no.
Now there's CPAs, but there is Arizona tax credit, right?
That's right. Yeah, the charitable tax credit. We are under that umbrella. So individuals can make gifts up to $400. And basically, when they file their taxes in 2023 for the 22 year, if they have a large enough tax liability with their state taxes, I want to make that clear, then they can make that gift to Habitat, and that will offset those costs to the state. So it's a dollar for dollar credit, right? So you write the check for $400, you get the $400 back when you file your taxes. I will put in the asterisk because we always cover our butts. Make sure you talk to that trained CPA.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, talk to the licensed CPA. But yeah, it just, when you do have a tax liability, and the way I always see that is that it's a matter of you either saying, all right, government, I'm paying you my tax bill, so you direct the funds, or, hey, I owe, and I'm going to direct the funds.
Right. So we talked about that earlier, where a lot of people want to know where their tax dollars are going.
Yep.
Right. So the tax credit, the school tax credit, there's quite a few tax credits that you can utilize to redirect your money. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because if just the Flagstaff community that's earning money, paying those taxes to the state. If everybody contributed their $400, we would have $16 million annually redirected to Flagstaff. Now, we have a coalition of all of the nonprofits that follow or fall underneath the charitable tax credit umbrella, and we collaborate very, very well. And so in that shared resource, we found last year we had a record amount of tax credits going to Flagstaff of about $2.5 million.
Oh, gosh. Which sounds great, but it's so short of what it could be.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
So the point is that I would say probably there's a very good likelihood that if you're listening right now, you haven't taken advantage of it. And the easiest way to take advantage of it, because it can be a little confusing, taxes are meant to be that way, I think. So just go to your tax professional, and when they're filing your taxes, before you sign, say, oh, I heard about these credits. Just ask the question.
Yep.
And at least then that professional can tell you, hey, yeah, if you've got kiddos, you can do the school tax credit. You can do the charitable tax credit, the foster care tax credit. There's just a lot of opportunities out there. And way to go, state of Arizona,
Sure.
For the great state of Maricopa
Yeah.
to say, hey, it's okay for Flagstaff and its citizens to redirect their money.
I love it. Awesome, Eric. Well, hopefully there's going to be an awesome 2023 for you, and hopefully we can accelerate some of that home growth.
Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, we'll look forward to good things coming from Habitat.
Appreciate it, Chris.